We're back for episode 8 of the Closer to the Heart podcast. I have my good friend on here back on, Nathaniel DeRusha, and we were talking a lot more about his ventures in pro media marketing last time, as well as some musician type of stuff in performance practice and how it links to the music retail business and industry. And excited to dig a lot more into that side of things, as well as just some general entrepreneurial topics here today. And I think something we were digging into before we got on here that I'd like to go a little deeper into now is you've encountered a lot of resources for counteracting the problem of being a performer and having done a lot of classical music or just music that doesn't encourage you to improvise or compose on the spot. And that if you don't feel comfortable with that, what resources would you recommend other than iReal Pro, which is the go-to one for all the classical musicians out there, or sorry, for the jazz musicians out there, right? Which is a great app, but you have a lot of other ideas that you want to share.
There's so many technologies now that I could look back and say, man, I wish I had that when I was a kid, when I was first getting started. Some of them are really, really obvious, but we just don't really think about this as being a real catalyst. And some are definitely like, yeah, you're going to pay a subscription, you're going to follow along and do the exercises. And I've always been a big fan of iReal B. I think that's when I started with it. It was called iReal B, and you could get like all the it was like 1,200. It was a book of 1,200 like pre-made like standards, and it had like the little playback engine that's in there that you could turn volume up and down. But I think it was kind of going another step up, but also going a step backwards, which was my start was with Band in a Box. I got a cracked version of it when I was at Northern Arizona University back in like the late 90s, early 2000s. I think it would have been around like 2002. And I was really studying jazz at the time. I mean, I really was. That's when I was studying with Joel DeBartolo's Tonight Show Band bass player. Really fascinating career that he had, and his playing ability was just awesome. But he was kind of towards the late stages in his life. He had some health problems that really kind of took him out of the full-time playing game. Basically, age caught up with him, and it was within about like 5 or 6 years, I think, of him taking that position that he had a heart attack. I know he certainly had one right when I had gotten there back in 2002. Wow. He had a heart attack, but wealth of knowledge, and so I was really heavily studying jazz. Well, Band in a Box shows up, and it had really two main features in it that changed how I learn and completely altered the trajectory. So part one is just having this playback engine that's running changes that you put in. So really similar concept to iReal B and some of the others that are out there. So yeah, I'm learning that there's no time to pause to think when it comes to playing music. I think that's a really important concept. Is you're on this rolling process as you're deciding what to play and getting your brain to translate it to your hands as you're viewing, and there's all these things that we're doing.
It happens. It happens in real time,
and there's no stopping. If I lose the next piece or I stumble, we fall. Like it's that, especially when you're talking about that 10% upper, like super upper echelon of musical ability. The reason why there's so many classical musicians who are addicted to Adderall, right? So I'm running this this game then of keeping up. And eventually I'm not just keeping up. Now I'm getting ahead of it by really crafting my own lines. Now, it's still following that prescribed, here's the chord change, you got 4 clicks, and then you get the next chord change, you get 4 clicks, and the next. Like, it's on this same repeating pattern that's just chugga, 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 it's just moving at whatever that tempo is, and you hang on. So I'm having to formulate what am I playing. You can always start with just like 4 quarter notes, next chord, quarter notes, quarter notes, quarter notes, quarter notes, quarter notes. Then you can start just going like root, root, third, third, root, root, third, third. As long as you're doing something, and then you start to expand the vocabulary out, and it grows over time. But you're in a playback engine that's keeping the tempo going, so you have to stay in that constant state. Yep.
So you have to stay steady. Yeah. Even if you're just like, even if all you can say, as you're learning Spanish is, "Hola, yo soy Josh," hablo español.
You're saying something.
Like, you're
and then you speed it up. Then you speed it up,
Right.
and you speed it up, and then it just becomes pocket knowledge. The myelin is in there just like rap, like over and over and over again, and just creating those pathways in there for like instantaneous recall. Now, in the case of Joel DeBartolo, he told me this.
Yeah.
He said he had a screen above his head that had the chord changes, and he just followed along. So maybe there are some other ways to view it, but for me, it's kind of by ear. But for me, I like sheet music, so I wish I had a screen in my head like he did. But for me, I like to have that screen so I can see it, and it gives me a different level of possibilities. Where if I was just to rely completely on my memory or my ear, so with Band in a Box, I'm in that state. Well, here's part 2 of Band in a Box. So it has a generator in it. And what the generator does is you put in the style and you put in the solo instrument. So if I put in tenor sax, John Coltrane, spit me out a solo. It does. And it was crazy because I always had this like Johnny Mnemonic like concept of like, what if I could just take Band in a Box and just like into my brain, and then it made me play like that. Because I still, even to this day, I don't understand the algorithms on how they make it so accurate, because it literally is like it's John Coltrane just wrote a solo, and then you just refresh it and it does another one, and you do refresh it and it does another one. But I think what it does is it goes back to the building blocks that we had previously talked about, where it's like you just brick here, brick here, brick here, brick here, put them together. I think it does the same thing. It says, okay, well, here's all the changes, here's all the possibilities, insert, random. But you know that it fits because it's like a column, in my brain at least. It's like a column system, and it's like, okay, we'll just pick it and put it in place, Random generation, just switch it. Because the way that we resolve from one chord to the other, don't think of it as notes, think of it as scale tones, right? Or chord tones. And then you can just change keys at will. So it's very much like a programming processing thing. So how do you train for that? Well, it's simple. You take Band in a Box and you spit out all of the solos and you learn how to sight read them. So you take that and you sight read it through one time, which you're probably going to biff really hard the first time through. And then you go back through and then you take the time to learn them just really quickly, surface value, then redo. And keep yourself on a constant cycle like that. So what that's doing is 2 parts. Number one is it's increasing your sight reading ability like almost exponentially, because you're getting so quick with it. You're getting used to the pattern recognition, knowing what a third is, what a fifth is. You start to see those relationships on paper. And then from there, you take it one step further, which is I'm also embedding those patterns into my head. And into your fingers. Like, so it's all...
And into your fingers.
All of it is time.
Most importantly,
it's you just putting in the time. The tool was there, and I just put in the time.
which is what I've come to understand. Yeah, and it sounds to me like Band in a Box. It gives you a band to play with, and so that you don't have to call up your buddies to practice playing in real time, and also B. Which is kind of what iReal Pro does, but not necessarily. It's kind of like a quantizing, playback engine more so. But that's crazy. I didn't realize Band in a Box actually wasn't just, like make my cute little Beat Buddy, Digitech,
absolutely.
Drum beat kind of thing to play along with type of, cute little software. It's not just that. It's actually got all these, it's kind of got big data before big data was cool, but with all these jazz musicians and I don't know what other types of genres, performers,
backing tracks
inside of it. I don't really know Band in a Box that well.
Well, really popular for backing
what else
tracks
can it
people.
do with
what
that type
they're
of big
doing
data
is
synthesis?
they're just writing out their whole arrangement. So you can write a song, you can give it chord changes, you can pick styles, and it'll just auto play them. You don't have to program. You don't have to call in a musician and put a microphone up and capture a recording. You don't have to do any of that. You can just say,
Right.
overall genre. It's almost like ChatGPT, right? You can just give it a series of prompts and it'll spit something out. It's doing that,
Yeah.
but it's using like real audio files
Yeah.
because they just have these snippets, and it has a really savvy algorithm in there to change keys and do other things. But so it's pulling all of this data in and making a realistic sounding backing band. So you can get to a part, maybe you're not a very strong soloist. I mean, maybe you are, but if you're not a strong soloist, you can just be like, oh, I want to have, 16 bars of a guitar solo because I'm just a singer. I don't play an instrument, but you can have an entire backing band playing for you. That was, I think, the whole concept of band in a box to begin with. It was a something
Right.
to play along to in live performance. So I just figured out another like educational
see.
hack with it
Okay.
for learning how to sight read and learn licks as quick as possible to help build that library of bass lines. Because I would even do it with the bass lines too. It wasn't just all the soloistic stuff. You could have the bass line and it would spit out the actual like notation on a staff. And so you could just practice sight reading, boom, regenerate,
Right.
practice sight reading, regenerate, practice sight reading. And so that's kind of system one. So there was a secondary one, I think, that was even more powerful than band in a box for overall just like musical achievement, and that was recording. That's actually just listening to myself play. How many musicians out there don't want to
Right.
do that? They're like, I don't want to hear myself. Dude, I
Everybody.
love it. I was listening back to some tracks that
Yeah.
I captured last night. So I use a DP48. We're talking about technology. So I don't use a bass amp right now. I've used bass amps plenty in the past, but right now it's just easier for me to travel because I'm usually pulling a trailer full of PA speakers and lighting and other things like that now at this point. I'm about the production now more
Yeah.
than I'm stressing over what I'm doing on stage. Like that ship is sailed. I moved on to other
Yeah.
things. Yeah, I've done.
Yeah.
I've
Spent the
paid
time in
my
there.
dues, if you
Yeah.
will. I've been in the shed, and now I have emerged,
Yeah.
ready to actually go out and do something with it, monetize it, all that great stuff. But yeah, so
Yeah.
it was really a recording. So with the DP48, I have an SD card, and I just pop it in the back, and I select which group I want to record, and then I hit record. That's it. I mean, it's literally that simple. So then I can come home, I can plug it in, I can upload it into Logic, I can just listen to the raw file through like, QuickTime Player or whatever, and I can hear how I did. And that's the main point, is getting that feedback of how did I actually do. Because we're running through how many things in our head
Yeah.
when we're out playing. We got ego and we got id, and then super ego somewhere in there too, like throwing bombs at us.
And there's
It's
also
like,
just-
I just want to play,
Yeah.
man.
And there's also just the fact that you can't when I'm sure have you done any vocal lessons before?
You don't want to hear this Barry White anytime soon.
Okay. So I mean, what they tell you, and any good vocal teacher will go over like your anatomy and how that relates to what you hear and what what everyone else is hearing when you're singing. There's a technique called cover where you're actually removing, like you're kind of rearranging your vocal cords in such a way, it's hard to describe, that you're actually preventing yourself from hearing what you're singing. You're like kind of muffling yourself and like closing off a airway to like your ear canals deep inside in your sinuses. But it allows you to not enter falsetto, but to go up past falsetto and still sing in a full voice. So the way you sound when you're singing in general is not what you're going to hear on the outside, because you hear all the resonance inside your head. But when you're singing through cover, it's like someone like put a mute on you almost. But then you're just singing this belting, very full, not it sounds like your voice, not like you're trying to make your voice sound higher in falsetto, right? When you're singing in cover. And so when you're performing, it's not quite the same thing, but it is kind of technically a similar concept, because you're sitting here on stage with the early, permutation of your sound, not how it's matured as it's gone out into the audience, and how that's sounding acoustically out in the audience, right? Does that make sense? how what you're hearing is not actually what the audience is hearing. So again, when it comes back to
correct.
listen
Yeah.
to yourself,
Audio
what you're actually doing.
schizophrenia. Audio
Right.
schizophrenia
'Cause
is
it's
where
different.
you can't hear what you're producing. I think it's probably in that same world. That's the concept I've heard, audio schizophrenia, and I've seen it in action as a sound guy. It's amazing. It's the fake lever on the mixer.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever heard of that. You'll have an artist and they want more out of their monitor. They're like, I need more. But you know where it's at.
Yeah.
Like you're an engineer, you've dialed it in, you've calibrated that monitor for the right SPL so it's not bleeding into all your mics. You've measured it and it's there, and they're telling you, I don't hear enough of myself. They don't hear enough of themselves, they don't hear enough of the monitor. There's a very big difference. So with the fake lever, you look like you're riding a fader up, and in their mind they think it's actually getting louder, but you didn't change anything, and they go, oh yeah, perfect, that sounds right. Dude, it's exactly what you're talking about. There's a feedback system within
That's
our own
so
head,
funny.
in our sinuses, in all those cavities. I've heard it as audio schizophrenia before. I don't know if that's even correct, but absolutely true.
There's
Big
definitely a psychological component to it as well. I'm just saying, in the vocal world, there actually is an
It's
anatomical
almost like a phase cancellation
element to that. I guess
like a psychological phase
kind
cancellation.
of like that, but it's more like, well, they're like literally the way that your voice is going to sound a lot boomier to you than it
Gotcha.
will to other people, on average, because it's
Gotcha.
resonating inside
Okay.
of your head, right? So you're hearing the resonance inside of your head. That's what I was saying, and it's like, it'll sound different out here than it will right here as well. You're hearing this when you're performing, You're hearing what's here. You're not hearing what's out in the audience, right?
Yeah.
Or what's going through the PA or the monitors, right? So there's also that element to it too. But are there any other softwares that were pretty helpful for you?
Yeah.
that you would suggest to
So
other people trying to
there's
learn?
two really important parts as well to learning music, and that's the ability to read and the ability to hear. This is usually known as music theory, and
because the ability to read is
Yes.
like all that we learn in classical music, right? And the ability to hear, but it's a different type of hearing. It's not hearing what should be played. It's hearing
That's right.
how to play
and
what
being
you know
able
you're
to
going
hear
play.
that before you play it.
Right, listening across
That's
different
what we
sections
want to
and
do,
matching
right? So why do
timbre,
we do ear training and music theory together? It's so it will train us to actually hear what we see before we play it, right? That's the whole point. Is so then
Right.
you have that fractional moment to adjust pitch and do all the other technical things that we would call playing in tune, playing in time with the instrument.
Yeah.
So the more that you can already kind of know what's happening, because you can learn by rote or by note, right? That's one of the music education sayings: learn by rote or by note. So I think that they're
Yeah.
combined together, and that's why we do music theory and ear training together, is because it's not just for me to have nothing in front of me and be able to hear and duplicate or match or complement, but it's also for me to be able to look at a page of music and know, well, this is what a third sounds like, this is what a fifth sounds like, so here's what I'm targeting. It's not just, I'm just going to slam my finger down and call it a day. That's where my note is at, right? So with those two things being so important, what softwares are out there? Well, going through the Full Sail program for my undergrads, I actually got 2 degrees
Oh, you
from
went to
Full
Full
Sail.
Sail,
I did
okay.
a composition degree and a audio engineering degree. So, but
Gotcha. Oh, okay, so you and Caleb Priest did the
it
same
just made
degree.
sense
Okay.
to do the next series of classes and get both degrees. So I just did both of them together. But within both of those, they put an emphasis on developing your ear and your music theory skills, which I had already done all of my associate's degree when I was at Eastern Arizona College. They had a basic, associate degree that would carry on to the other Arizona schools. That's how I ended up at Northern Arizona University. I got all of the academic level classes taken care of, so when I got to NAU I could really just focus on my music studies because all of that other undergrad stuff was gone, right? So when I went through a music program for ear training and theory with Eastern Arizona College, then I did it again when I was in the Army Band, because they send you through it when you're at the School of Music in Virginia. Mm-hmm. So that was the second time that I had done it, and so it reinforced even more. And then I went to Full Sail and then got it 2 more times in both of those programs. So I keep brushing up against it. It's getting easier for sure, but like I said, I certainly don't have perfect pitch, and I think in a lot of ways I wouldn't really want it. I think I like what I have right now. It's working out very well, so I change it. Absolutely. And so I look at it more as like, okay, well, I can kind of brush against it, but now at my own pace with Aurelia and Musician. Those are the 2 programs that they've decided to start, or they've been using for their programs, Aurelia and Musician. And so it's like Aurelia, a drill program. Musician. It'll be like interval, like flashcards, but it's all digital and
like a Duolingo, but for
that's right. Yeah, and so just spend a lot of time in it, and then you'll be fine.
Oh, okay, well that's just kind of
it really is. And then there's another one that's showing like your chords. Then you actually have to play, so you want to have like a keyboard controller. As well for both programs, because you'll actually be playing some of the stuff on a keyboard. So you do have to have a little bit of keyboard theory.
I guess that's helpful for ear training, and I know there are going to be a lot of guitar players out there who could really benefit from digging deep into the academic side of theory. I know there are a lot of guitar players who feel kind of imposter syndrome about in the face of the classical musicians, like, we don't actually know music, we just kind of vibe it. right. And so like I've seen both sides of the pond in detail at this point, which is really not something that many people can say. And you've seen both sides of the pond in detail as well. We're both kind of there. And the guitar players feel self-conscious that they don't actually know music because they just, they play 3 or 4 chords and, away we go. We don't even have to read music. We just play tab. And, I guess it kind of matters that we're in tune. And, but, there's this there's this very attuned playing by rote approach. Yeah. Whereas the classical musicians are the opposite. It's play by note. And, we need to know the background of this composer and the idiom and the style of this type of music, and the theoretical construction of the harmony and the melody, and and the styles and the articulations. And when you do any classical degree, you're taking 4 semesters of ear training, aural skills as they call it, it's AURAL, aural skills, and music theory. You take 4 semesters of that. Probably take 3 semesters of music history, as well as many other core classes, like probably 2 semesters of keyboard, of keyboard class, keyboard theory, and all this adds the structure that you're talking about that you can fill in on the back end if you haven't had it. I guess what I'm primarily concerned with here is for classical musicians who feel like they missed the boat on the playing by rote side of things, right? Would you just send them to Band in a Box or iReal Pro, or would you send them to any other softwares or programs, or
Well, I mean, those are the main ones that I can think of when it comes to like a technology-based solution. But never forget there's other solutions, which is just finding other musicians and playing with them and coming up with new ideas. So, I mean, I think one of the biggest disservices that we do is we put ourselves in a camp as a musician where, note or rote, why not both? It should always be. So you just follow those. You just follow those paths.
Yeah.
It's okay. So I mean, as a bassoon player, what can you do? Well, you can replace a bass player in a group, because I've done it for a woodwind quintet with a double bass. I've done that before.
You could replace. Frankly, it's been proven you can replace a saxophone.
There's a lot of ways you can get into it
in any ensemble. There's a guy named Paul Hansen that's been doing that for 20 years.
Like everybody else, you got them all. So it's what you decide to do with them. Now, tessitura be damned. I mean, you are limited to some things, with just the instrument itself.
It's roughly in the range of a baritone guitar.
I mean, I wouldn't
Lowest note
really
is
be
B
playing,
flat 0,
the
right?
flute solo to Stars and Stripes with a bassoon, although people have done it. But it's maybe a higher pitched instrument, like a guitar would be inappropriate. But there's no reason that you can't attempt it and see what happens.
You could do it with an octave.
You probably could. There's probably some ways to do it, but look, the concept is like the sky's the limit. The point is you're just doing something. You're getting out there and you're finding those other people to play with and show them that hey, you're a serious musician and you take this seriously, because you can. I mean, I'm not saying be like a some type of fascist with it or something. I'm just saying just get out there and play music with others, because there's 4 pillars of music competency, I think, like what makes you a valuable asset to an organization, and you have to have all 4 of these things to truly be an asset, which is you're proficient on your instrument. You don't have to be Paganini or anything, but you've got to be a proficient musician. You understand the language and know basic theory and ear training and stuff like that. That's for every musician. Number 2 is you're always prepared for the rehearsals. Like what's coming. You've got the material down. If you've had a few weeks to work on it, or that's even better. Sometimes you only have the last minute, so hopefully your sight reading skills are up. So that all kind of comes with that territory. Number 3 is be on time. And when I say be on time, that means be a little bit early. My rule from the Army was 10 minutes prior to the 10 minutes prior. So if I'm 20 minutes early for something, I'm usually in the realm of, okay, no need to have a panic attack. Because I hate the feeling of rushing to a thing, and then you got to unpack your stuff and set it up, and then like, we've been waiting on you, and then the downbeat. Like, I just hate being in that position. I don't like it.
I'm
always like 20 minutes early. This is the most important thing that I'm doing right now. Let me do it right. And then the last one is when the music's over, when you're not doing anything but you're around other people, be somebody worth being around. There's plenty of great players out there, but there's
someone who adds value.
This is friendship.
To
We're sharing something extremely important to who we are as humans.
That's value.
Music is something that connects us on a spiritual level. I mean, it's awesome what it can do. It can change lives. It can take kingdoms down. I mean, it's amazing what you can do. Like the civil rights movement, the music that came out of the civil rights music, Marvin Gaye, What's Going On? Like, take that as an example. What a beautiful song. What one of the best compositions ever. And it was born out of a time of like pure frustration. Like there's so much.
And then we got a hold of the whole hippie movement, and all the music from the 70s came out, and we all still look back on it this day, like how do we get back there,
2024
right?
And the riots of 2020 and 21 and the George Floyd thing and all that stuff, where was the music? I sat there watching, and I was like, where's Woody Guthrie when you need him? And I'm not a songwriter, I'm a technician, not an artist. That's the other thing.
They had 40 years to clamp down on the creativity and dissemination of creativity.
Well, I figured that out when I was doing that second degree with Full Sail when it came to composition. I really believe that there are technicians and there's artists. And so, I mean, getting a commercial music degree, there was a little bit in the songwriting section. I bombed it hard. Like, I just don't have anything to say. I mean, I would rather speak rather than write a musical thing about it. As a musician, I like being a technician. I like being somebody who can just walk up. And this is part of that classical, like, note side of me, not the rote side of me, the note side, is being a technician, to walk in and be like, all right, here's a score marking. You got a crescendo, you got a decrescendo, you got an accent, you got all these things, and you're working it out, and you're following along, and you're reading this technical manual in real time. Like, I absolutely love that, and that's what makes me a technician more than, she broke my heart, she ripped it out through my a-hole, whatever. Like, I'm just not that, because when I was going through music school, they literally told me, they said, don't bother trying to write anything else other than a love song. I was literally told that from a professor because I deviated from the norm, and he just absolutely decimated my composition.
He
Yeah.
told you
because
just
he's
not
like,
to
yeah,
do it
this
'cause
is
it wouldn't
great. If you want to
sell,
go down
or just
that
not to
road,
do
that's
it?
on you. But yeah, I really highly recommend you write something like a love song.
He just because like back in the
know.
70s, Pink Floyd wasn't writing love
But
songs.
that's
They're writing songs about all the
that's
stuff
a
we want to
symptom
write
of
songs
a
about,
of a system that's
right?
broken, right?
Yeah, and so I don't think that
Yeah.
playing along with the system is really the answer. To me, the answer is do that shit anyways and find other ways to make money, right? I kind of gave up on making money only off of my artistry right when COVID hit. Because it taught me that they can pull the plug on my performance at a moment's notice whenever they want. If I don't have any online channels, not depending on gig economy, they can pull the plug on my income whenever they want. The end. So that started this whole journey through like gear and online stuff and trying to figure out how to make that work, and got a lot of ideas I'm executing on this year for that. And then also eventually finding my way to, in the meantime, I need to figure out how to create gainful employment when none of the classical musicians want me around because I don't think like they do. And that was especially clear with the George Floyd stuff. That kind of showed me that like my kind isn't welcome here, basically, because the academia side of things really became very insular and groupthinky after a while. So I just had to pursue completely different channels, and I gave up on being an academic professor. I gave up on gig economy completely, and I looked for completely different answers, and that's part of the big reason why I'm at Sweetwater right now. Is I just kind of see it as like a an ongoing doctoral training
100%.
in music industry and music retail and business in general, right? And I think those are very vital skills to kind of move forward with things. And I haven't given up on my desire to create the music that I want to see in the world with my personality and my goals and my message behind it, right? But I just think that having to depend on that to make money is to make the money that's going to pay my rent and keep the water going and the lights on is just like it's a suicidal strategy, unfortunately, right now. And I want to create part of my life's work to be to create a national/global do my part to play to create a national/global economy where someone with my ambitions can actually meet those ambitions in a pure sense through the music, through channels that won't rake them over the coals, even if they do make it to the other side of being hired by a recording company or an agency, right? And make them do 5 record deals, not make a dime on any of them because they're paying for all the touring costs up front, and their earnings go toward paying the company's overhead, essentially, right? And then hopefully they're not just owned by their record company 10 years later because no one taught them how to sign the right legal documents or show them the Daniel Passman book, right? So this kind of plays into what I also wanted to talk to you about was you were I feel like that I forget the segue, but basically we were getting into the Midas Touch, which is a book you've been reading recently. I just think that getting more savvy with business mindset and entrepreneurship in general is kind of the way out for us performers, regardless of how deep we want to extend our toes into the business side of things, or if you want someone else to just simply handle all that and find the right person to trust. But I think it behooves us to be educated on these things. And so I guess you've been really interested in the Midas Touch, which is a book by Robert Kiyosaki and Donald Trump, 2 proven entrepreneurs over time who have made many mistakes and come out the other side. And if that's enough to turn you off to this discussion, then frankly you're going to be broke forever.
Absolutely, life changing.
Life-changing. But the whole point is the whole point of being an artist is to be open minded and find new information and to disseminate that and to help other people. Bridge that gap, right? So, what were you said there were five main pillars of the Midas Touch. And so, what are those five main pillars for those of us who are like, I don't feel like reading the book, or I'm just too lazy to read it, or F that Trump guy.
Yeah, well, the main
man,
thing is understanding like all of the different parts and pieces that are most relevant, like because there's a lot of different avenues that you can take in business that are literally dead ends, like the mistakes that I made over the years, like trying to do anything business related, and it's not a matter of if you're going to make mistakes, it's when you're going to make them, and just the point is to make them as quickly as possible. But really,
everybody's
absolutely, and I hope so.
Before.
I hope that you bomb something. I hope that you've screwed something royally. Like that, it's the best.
Everyone's
it's the best
bombed an
tool
audition.
to
Everybody
become
has.
better at things. Now, when it comes to the Midas Touch, and I'll try to remember all of them. I think I got them though. But the first one, the real main one is, and in my opinion, the main one is that you're really you're self-disciplined. You're proactive. You're the type of person who's going to get up and just get out there and do your best all the time. You're gonna put your soul into it. Is really what it comes down to. It's that go to the new world, burn the ships mentality. That this is it. And there's a word I like to use, and this is the one that I got when I was in grad school, which is called volition. So volition is that last moment of action before you do the thing. So like if I'm laying in bed and I know what time it is and I know all of the things that I need to do, like I have to get these done, and I know how warm that bed is, and you're just laying in there and you're going like, oh man. Volition is the moment that you grab the covers and throw them and say, I'm going to go take on the world. That's volition.
That's it.
Right? So
remove creature comfort.
That's it.
And jump in full sail.
Yeah. So
to the pain. Yeah. Knowing that much more higher thread count covers lay on the other side of that pain. Much warmer.
Yeah.
Comfort
and don't think of the dollar amount.
The
think of what you're going to do with the money. Like that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. The money for the mission. That's the big thing for me.
Yep.
It's like I need money for the mission. My mission is to reform this broken system, and the fact that the artistry part of that system, the musician part of that system, is infinitely more broken.
And this is all
than the
possible with
itself.
concept 2, which is focus.
Yeah.
Right.
I need money to do that.
Making sure that we're single-minded to the goal, that we don't have those purple squirrel moments. Like I like to say, it's the moment that you just. There's something shiny and different that's pulling you. You've got to really be really be linear in that.
Yeah.
So for me, it was really simple. The anchor point was always music. So from the time that I was leaving high school and I was getting out of the orchestral world and moving into the orchestral world, it was interesting because I did have a distraction, but it was still music related. It was pit orchestra. It was playing in jazz combo. It was doing pep band. It was having a rock band with my buddies on the weekends. It was all of these other things, but it was still music. And then it went from there into university level, and then World War III broke out in 2003. And then I joined the Army, and that was in the Army doing music for 12 years. And then I get out and I try to start a business, absolutely fail getting a recording studio going in this little podunk town. But there was a mine in the area, so I ended up a copper miner for a few years while I was still working on building understanding of business principles. I was working in an interesting system. Right. And it pushed me into like agile teams and management and all these other things that were extensions of my leadership time in the military, which are all really valuable for business. I was working on my master's at the time. Yeah. It was all these things that were kind of happening in real time that were all like kind of evolutionary processes that influenced into who I became. But still, music was always in the background. Focus is still like kind of following that trajectory. And then I pull the plug from there and go to Sweetwater. I was like, I'm going to get closer to the industry. I know there's a gate somewhere in here, and I'm going to find that gate, and I'm going to get through it to the next level. And then, I find the pro media marketing side, and there was, a need to fill. And so I go to the right folks and get the approvals, and off we go. And so all these things happened really quickly, but it's always been that one focus. And now here it is. It just takes a while to get there, but I never lost it. Number 3 is brand, right? That's kind of the other piece is what the heck am I building? Right? Sometimes you don't know.
Yeah.
You're just assembling parts and pieces. I'm very much about that ADDIE model. Was it the assess, design, develop, implement, evaluate, ADDIE. I really like that model, and I apply it to everything. It doesn't have to be as linear as ADDIE really is, but it's just a concept of I'm going to find the problem, I'm going to identify it. And this is also Army too, by the way. It's crazy. There's like, when you go to those review boards, there's questions. One of them was about how to assess a problem and develop it and find a solution. And it fits perfectly with the ADDIE model, which is find the problem and what's causing it, come up with an idea, implement that idea, and figure out if that idea worked. If not, go back and repeat the design and implement processes. So I just applied that to everything. The mining community taught me that. But for branding, it's like, okay, well, sometimes you got to pack on some weight to kind of figure out what exactly it all is. So in my mind, as I'm learning more about the industry and I'm developing, I'm coming up with new ideas and new strategies for what I'm going to ultimately become in this next iteration of business. In the meantime, I'm still building relationships, and I'm putting these other initiatives that I have out there to see which ones are going to bear fruit, just like we do in sales by finding new folks to knock doors.
And you learn to appraise those relationships quicker and quicker and quicker over time, and that's part of the experiential element that you can't just simply learn. You can't learn in a book. You have to do it and do it and do it, and you'll develop that game sense as you go on. I pulled up Jamie's style, the 5 key pillars. There's strength of character, as you said, focus on your single-minded
and
focus, brand building, which you just went over. Relationships, which you were starting to dig into, and then the little things that count.
Earlier.
Yeah.
Yep.
Add that
structure that's
but
such a simple plan, right? And then the relationship side, like I said, there's planting seeds time, and that's what I'm doing right now. I know now that with the evolutionary process that I'm on, I'm now really just moving into the next level of sales, but then going like, well, what's going to be my business? I think for me, the MI side of it that I'm engaging in right now is a key to learn more about the systems that are available and how to kind of get in front of the trends to understand them better. Okay. But what do I want to do with it? Music instruments.
What do you mean by MI?
The MI industry or the AV industry, audiovisual. I don't think there's even like cohesive language to describe any of it, but the MI musical instrument world is what I want to do, because being on a stage, being a performer is really at the end of the day what makes me happy. But I want to have something that is actually like a sustainable business model that has to do with entertainment. So I think kind of putting all the pieces together where I've landed at this point is I think I'm going to just have like a really just kick-ass show. I'm a Vegas style bass player. That's what I like the most. Vegas style pit orchestra stuff. That's what makes me the happiest. That's what I have the most fun with. So I'm working with another guy. We're doing a Green Day tribute band. So that's kind of one of our next things, do the whole part, I'm talking tribute band. We're going to impersonate a famous band, because there's a lot of value right now in those bands. And what's happening is age finally caught up with our classics. I went and saw Foreigner last year in October. I happen to know the bass tech, and we're working on stuff right now as well. It's just, with it kind of ramping up in a new position at other partnership, it's been it's taken a little bit of my time out of doing individual product demos for friends is on the back burner. But there was not an original member of Foreigner on stage, but it was Foreigner. Like, it was 100% like it was the Foreigner production.
Yeah.
Well, so the guitar one of the
known
guitar
as
players was not going to be able to make
Yeah.
it, whoever the one who plays with them. So they called in all of the ringers. It was all ringers for the whole thing. But occasionally this guitarist will play with the band. And so technically it still is Foreigner with one person. So I heard a really great term the other day. They said, now is the time of franchising bands. So I think that is one of the future trends as I've been studying and just ear to the ground. I think franchising bands is going to become a new move in the live music market. Because they want to hear that stuff, right? So Infocom, I went to Infocom in June.
The infrastructure is kind of already there.
It's totally
just not owned by the same person. With all these, all I have to do is spend a weekend in Fort Wayne and realize that over 50% of the
now
bands
that's just
cover
this area. If you start heading towards Chicago, it's really weird. They want to hear original bands over there. So I don't gig on that end of the state.
Yeah.
I only gig here and then heading towards Ohio and then southern Indiana, like that whole corridor. But yeah, so now is the time of franchising bands. So it's really all about getting to know who holds the intellectual property. And so if you can build a system that says, hey, I want to preserve your band's legacy and your integrity, you hire my firm and we find the artists, we work on the vision, make sure that everything is good to go, and then off it goes. Now, that's just an idea. I probably won't turn into anything, but it's a show of some type, and I want it to be in the world of a show. It's not a product. It's not a service. Oh, I mean, technically it's kind of a service, but it's really about like, okay, we're going to take this and we're going to send it around to casinos and other type events, corporate level. And there's a bunch of really cool models that are out there, especially with the franchising. There's one here local in Fort Wayne, and I've got another one I've heard of in Miami and another one in Houston, where they are.
So they're already organizations.
What they'll do is they come up with a concept, and then once that concept starts to get booked to its capacity, they start a second one. And then once they get to capacity, then they split those off. So you end up with like 30 or 40 musicians that are all working at your disposal, and you can just pick and choose off the roster and create as many as you need. So that's another pretty popular model. I just want to go a little bit above and beyond that because I want to have the full tech side. I want to have, video walls and really, really intricate lighting systems and other things like that. So it's more of like a mid to large size corporate event, Vegas style thing. So that's kind of what I'm building towards, but I still have all my recording gear and everything that I need to make that a reality. So
yeah, and frankly, anybody who's spent all their time performing, like Tim Henson or Tosin Abasi or Jordan Petrucci, how much do you think they actually know about how to set up the infrastructure for the AVL, more like the VL of all of that, let alone the business side of setting all that up, right? How much are they actually going to be able to put that together?
I have no idea. Yeah. Well, a lot of them
depending
are,
on someone like you to
set
that up.
You pick things up as you go,
right?
like...
yeah. Well, I'm just saying performers are generally very, very dependent on the business and tech side of things, and those people creating a situation where they can even make money to begin with. Which is also part of the reason why most of these companies
it is a very high level position to get to be in as a tech expert. But at the end of the day, a lot of these guys really know what they're doing. I've had some pretty high level conversations with performers on a high level because they get groomed by the manufacturers themselves in a lot of ways, or they encounter fall downs on stage with things, and they learn about what a Maddie line is. like those things happen, and I think any savvy
Yeah.
business owner, you want a 360 on what you're doing. You want to really understand everything, because when you are at the mercy of other people, unless you're a really great salesman or a really great people person, it makes it much harder to maintain the
Yeah.
reins on things. But I think if you really
Yeah.
understand a concept and then you find the right person to carry out the plan with that thing, that's the most strategic way to build a business. So become informed yourself. Go to the library and get the books. They're there. You just got to go grab them. That's go pick them up. Get yourself savvy on
Right.
it.
Yeah.
That's on each individual person to figure out
Yeah.
how much skin they're going to put in the
And
game. But look, I'm the only one who can be responsible for my world, so
yeah.
I better
And
take it seriously because nobody else is going to.
no
Yeah.
one's going to do it for you. You got to figure it out yourself and position yourself right and know what you need to know. And there's a small handful of books that I would personally recommend for anyone listening who says, I want to get a little more serious about taking ownership of my business acumen and my financial health as a musician and artist to fund the mission. I mean, something like the Midas Touch could certainly be very helpful. If you haven't read
That's good.
if you haven't read Rich Dad Poor Dad, you should just go, put that in an audiobook and read it now. What it doesn't get talked about nearly as much is a book called Cash Flow Quadrant, which is kind of like a trilogy of core books from Kiyosaki, and everything else is just kind of derivative stuff from there. Cash Flow Quadrant is the second in that main trilogy, and it talks about these distinctions between E, S, B, and I quadrants, the employee, self-employed, business, and investor quadrants that all pay different tax brackets, but by the way, 40, 60, 20, and 0 on average in that order. So it behooves you to know how you can save on your taxes. That's pretty important. It's about a lot more than just that quadrant, though. Then there's another book in the third in the trilogy called Why the Rich Are Getting Richer, and that kind of goes into a lot more detail and expands on a lot of those ideas laid out in those first two books. But I mean, a lot of financial and entrepreneurial acumen is basically just a reframing of everything that you were mistaught growing up. That you should essentially view financial life as developing a skill set, marketing that skill set to an employer, and then receiving a paycheck for it. Right, which everyone has to do at some point to get off the ground. For the most part, there's very very few people who just did entrepreneurship their whole lives, and also weren't born into an entrepreneurship family and just kind of taught these things from the age of like 5 or 6. Wouldn't that be nice? But to take agency over those skills is a process and a journey, and those three books I mentioned you kind of really jumpstart that journey very 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 quickly. But I guess figuring out where things go from there is how to get out of this mindset that I have to do work for somebody else to get paid. Like, how am I going to take ownership of my own channels? And what's getting a lot more popular these days, people are trying to stream performances a lot more to a global audience ever since COVID. I see a lot of musicians actually doing pretty well for themselves without having done much of any research into business education at all, by just simply taking a very good concept. Like, there's a group called Flavor Trip, that's like a house DJ group from a duo from Luxembourg. They're a couple, and they have like 540,000 subscribers and like less than 50 sets on YouTube, and they're just very friendly and relatable and have very 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 well constructed house sets. And now there's like 15 or 12 or 15 different copycat accounts saying, oh well, this model works now, that you can go you can be like a roaming nomad couple in like a little like a little trailer hitch or something, and hit up these Airbnbs and write that off on taxes, and put out these sets and like cook these elaborate meals while you're doing the DJ sets. And I think they got that idea from an artist called Guido Sartoris from E110101, who just, with his company, the Detroit Classic Gallery, which is like an underground revival company from Argentina in Buenos Aires, He did a set where he made like this whole like 6-course Argentinian meal while playing like one of the best house sets I've ever heard for like 2 hours, and just got a lot of views. And that suspiciously came out like 6 to 9 months before the first Flavor Trip set. So, but like that idea took off, and they have like memberships and merch and all that, and you can tell the Flavor Trip's not like raking in the cash. But maybe I hope they will someday, very soon. But you can tell they can pay their bills comfortably, right? So there's just a whole bunch of different ways to slice, and it's all just a mindset change of am I going to depend on all these pre-prescribed gigs? And there's nothing wrong with being a classical performer or a jazz performer. There's nothing wrong with taking those gigs. It's just I think everyone watching can agree that. How am I going to pay my bills in 5 years if that's all I'm doing, right? If I'm just doing that and teaching lessons, even if you start getting a whole big book of students to teach, like how long is that actually going to last? In the meantime, I'm not getting any benefits. If I have a health emergency, that's going to eat everything I made in the last 6 months because I don't get insurance on it. And so I just think it behooves everybody to get informed on what makes a successful entrepreneur and business person, regardless of how far you go with that. And it has nothing to do with what they teach you in the academy, because that is going to be structured around how to be a C-suite executive for a Fortune 500 company and run somebody else's business, and then still be an E-quadrant person, which is an employee operating on a paycheck. Maybe you get some stock options, and you get a 20% tax rate off of those instead from the capital gains. And wouldn't that be nice? But there are just different ways to cut this, and they're all going to rest outside of the current system. So to recap, I got on a big old soapbox here, but to recap that, it would be Rich Dad Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant, Why the Rich Are Getting Richer. And then there's a whole bunch of books I could send anybody off to. They want to learn exactly what. If someone's more mechanically minded, technician minded, and they just want to know what the nuts and bolts are, look up a book from Josh Kaufman called The Personal MBA, which is, it's basically like the 450-page textbook he wish he had read going through like 2 or 3 business degrees. That just tells you what you need to be understand the mechanics of what a successful business are. What like customer acquisition, sales, marketing, inventory, all that type of stuff. So the books are all out there, and you can get a lot of the audiobooks for free. Some of them cost like $10-15 on Audible. A lot of the books are like $9, $10, $15 out there these days. They're dirt cheap. Anybody can afford to get these books. So just jump in and take ownership of your own education, because it's never been cheaper, never been more accessible. And
that's always the move.
I don't know what you would have to say
that's
about
always
that or
the
to add
move
on
is
to that.
a library card is free. Yeah. I went in there. I
Right.
just come out of like a downturn kind of period where a lot of things I was assessing in my life, and I walked into a library and changed my life. I found the right book, and I started reading it, and in that book it referenced another book. I went to the citations in the back, and I said, oh, let's see what that book's all about, and I read that one, and then I check the citations, and it leads me to 5 more books, and it just keeps going, and you consume them just like you do food, healthy, nutritious, wonderful food. You do the same thing for your brain. I mean, we can fill it with garbage as much as you want. There's a television on the back side of this wall over here that's full of it.
Yeah, you can. There's a phone with a bunch of memes that won't offer any educational material for you.
Yeah.
They'll just simply distract
Look,
you.
when you figure out what it is you want,
just every 7 seconds,
if you figure out what you want, why would you allow anything to ever stop you from going to get it? I mean, obviously, make sure you're doing things that are legal, moral, and ethical. Like, I mean, at least put that framework around what it is that you're doing. But
I know a few people who that doesn't necessarily.
Yeah,
stop.
don't be those people. I mean, it's the thrill of the win that you did it on your own terms. That is much better feeling than winning because you cheated. Yeah. Like, do it because you did it from the sweat of your own brow and with your own initiative. That's a much more satisfying win. And so, yeah, it's all
and
yours.
Then you own
get
those
to claim
assets.
it. Nobody gets to claim that they made you or did any of that sort of stuff. You get to be you. And it's amazing the number of people that want to go out and change the world and they don't even have an idea how to get started in making those really important changes in their own life. Like, go to bed on time, make sure that your house is a little bit tidier, maintain the little things. Yeah, like just do that type of stuff. I mean, but they'll be more than happy to go to a protest and throw a brick through a window just because the other side is being loud and they want to be louder. Like, we're just inundated from both sides of this craziness right now, and I don't let any of that affect me. I just say, okay, here's the trajectory that I want to be on, and don't let anything stop you.
And that's that first pillar in Midas Touch, right? And it's in so many countless other resources, financial, academic, whatever. Is just it says here the ability to take calculated risks, bounce back from failures, maintain a strong sense of self-discipline and determination. Right, and that self-discipline and determination comes from having something that means something to you to accomplish.
How many people are?
And that's what that focus part is.
Oh,
that focus naturally comes from having that goal, and a lot of people are lacking even that goal. I've known people who say, I really wish there was something I was really passionate about and wanted to do.
Well, here's the first thing you can do. Here's what I would tell those people. Number one. Can you be honest with yourself?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the first question to ask.
If you can't do that, what does any of the other stuff matter?
Yeah. Yeah, you're not going to get dependable feedback from your
I really want to make
from
a
your
change,
conscience and your brain if you can't be honest with
yourself. If I don't
you're
acknowledge
deprogramming yourself.
What it is that I'm doing that's stopping me from getting to a thing, what good is any of the other strategies if I can remove the most obvious one that's right in the front? Just be honest with you.
Right, is to so you don't have a stream of bullshit coming from your own brain and spirit, saying contradictory information to what you're trying to accomplish.
It took somebody else actually to make that change for me though, which is really interesting. I was just getting into video editing at the time. It was my my new rabbit hole that I went down. I was able to pork barrel a copy of Final Cut back when you had to buy it like in a box, like back in 2010-ish, something like that. And I found Peach Pit Press, who were producing the training manual for Final Cut at the time. You could just go onto their website, order online, and have everything. So I'm living in Virginia, and I'm getting in. Yeah, back when I had to order a manual. Yeah, it had a CD in the back. It had a CD-ROM in there that you would put in that had all your like training assets and other stuff as you were studying. But so I get this software and I start following the Peach Pit Press, and I'm really proud of a video that I had created. I had done all the editing, all the lower thirds, all the titling, everything. It looked fantastic. I was ready to show off to the world, and this dude that I was working with, he came in and he's watching my work, and I'm like super excited to show him, and he starts being critical. He starts popping all kinds of holes in my thing, and he's like, I don't like this and this and this. He's like, I wasn't really a big fan of that. And I'm sitting there, and I feel my blood pressure like going up, and that caveman DNA starts doing its thing in there.
Guy.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to get into a fight. I just didn't feel like it at that time. And so I kind of sit back, and I sat back and I just listened. And I said, okay, well, actually, you know what? Let me take a look at a few of those suggestions and see if they work. And you know what? It made the video better. I'll admit. His suggestions were actually some pretty good ones. It wasn't like he was some stellar, filmmaker. And that's, I think, what I had in my head. I was thinking, like, who are you to judge my work, right? But at the same time, I think he had an eye for design in some ways, and it was a really beneficial series of changes. So I make them, and I got a better product. I said, you know what? Maybe I should start listening to other people's input better. Shut my mouth and shut my, my eyes or whatever, and just listen to what they're saying. Take my thinking of what I want to say next.
Yeah. Shut your
and just listen to what they have to say first, and you might learn something. And then from there, it was like, okay, now I can actually build empathy and all those other things that are important to survive in this world.
So you just think it was someone encouraged you to build
my dad.
Good character just by putting you in the right situations? Yeah. Would you say it's specifically that, or something different than that, that gave you that purpose that you were talking about that someone had to give you?
I think I was open to it at the time. I think I had finally reached a point that I was kind of tired of fighting. Little did I know that one of my greatest battles was going to be coming
Okay.
just a few short years away from that. That's a whole nother thing. That's when you really gut check who you are as a human in a lot of ways. That was a very that was a gnarly situation.
Yeah.
But the one that I was in, I think at the time, I think I was ready to start down the path of being an empath because I was also a brand new father around that same time period too. So that was a big catalyst. I had a big life change of, you know what, dude, it's not all about you anymore. So when you
Right.
yeah, for me, when I had that
That
first kid, it
matures a
wasn't
lot
like
of
I needed
people.
to settle down or anything. I always knew that I wanted to be a parent. I think I didn't realize that I was really upping the ante in my musical life by getting married and having kids. I certainly don't regret it, but you want to talk about playing life at expert. Ay caramba. Like being responsible for
Yeah.
another human being that's not just your spouse, who at any point in time they can terminate the contract. They can just be like, I'm done with this. But like when it
Right.
comes to your children, your progeny, you don't get to just bail. They're your kid forever. That's 23 chromosomes walking around that are
Yeah.
attached to you. So I firmly
Yeah.
believe that you're responsible for that. So I always wanted everything. So I think I'm really working hard to maintain having everything. And that having a kid, I think, opened me up to the possibility of, when it comes to my work, maybe be a little bit more open to criticism, but also be selective in what you're going to let through. Because, like I said, I used a few of the
Yeah.
ideas. I didn't use all of them. I didn't have him walk in and be like, "Oh, well, I should just do it his
Yes.
way." No, I'm still going to be me.
Did that mentor give you that advice
It was
before or
after.
after you had your kid,
It was after the
first
kid.
kid?
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure. I mean, and we didn't really
Yeah.
have plans on the second kid yet for a little while. I was just still trying to figure out how to be responsible for another human life. But at the same time, what's the best way to do that? And that's to actually earn a living wage. And so I was, focus on work, focus on promotion, focus on that next duty assignment because I was in the States at the time and it took me back to Korea, and that's where it got really gnarly. But for that time period in the States, living in Virginia on Virginia Beach, that was an epic time period for my development because I was around resources. I was
Right.
around like real audio systems, like line arrays and digital consoles and things like that. That was my first like introduction into that because it was a band that had a budget versus the division bands, which they've got a whole weird battalion takes their money and then at the last minute gives it back, and then you've got like 30 seconds to spend it all before it's gone and they give it to someone else, and so you have to do these wish lists, but then the person who put in the wish list isn't even there anymore, and then you get all the gear they ordered and then you got to make hay out of it, and it was crazy sometimes with budgeting. But that's why I'm very adamant about
Yeah.
access to gear and really understanding what it is because I've just got this sweet tooth for it. I just want to be around it. I want to touch all of it and I want to turn
Yeah.
it on and yeah, do stuff
Yeah.
with it
Makes
rather
sense.
than what I felt I was doing a lot at Sweetwater, which was I was lucky when the vendors were there for me to see it, but most of the time I'm looking at inventory notes and saying, "Oh, well, I remember what they showed me and this would do for you." And that for me wasn't really fun. I was rather
Yeah.
like, well, how about I just show you? Talking about music is like dancing about architecture. It means nothing. So here, let me turn on this
Right.
moving head spot so you can see like what it's going to do at 250 feet for your play. I'd rather do that 10 to 1.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little more disembodied at Sweetwater because it's on the phone. It just has to be. You're already engaging in a disembodied form of sales. And phone sales has pluses and minuses in compared to in-person sales. And with phone sales, you don't have to watch your body language very carefully at all. It's more so, so that you keep your body language in check so that you don't have the wrong inflection on the phone with the customer, right? Because they're listening to your inflection on the phone, so like I'll gesticulate at my desk as if I'm talking to my computer. But fundamentally, the customer doesn't see any of that. But when you're talking to someone in person, if you need, a 15-second pause while they're talking to check on, your inventory notes or whatever, or to look something up on Google, right? Which, yeah, like, they're going to see that immediately and wonder what the hell is this guy doing? But, at Sweetwater, like, we do that every day. So, it's funny how, just being very good at knowing how to use Google really goes a long way. But there is a lot of main concepts in the education that structure the efficiency of those Google searches, and but it all you do really need the training there at Sweetwater to know all about the gear comprehensively, and then you build on those skills over time. And it's always a learning process. No one knows all 60,000 pieces of gear and inventory. That's just impossible. And we literally get like 10, 15, 20, 50 of them, new ones plus every single week. So there's no way to keep up with it all. You just have to have these global skills to work with. But if you're selling a specific line of products, like you're going to know those products in and out, and if you don't, then someone's going to know from your body language.
There's no imposter syndrome. You've got to actually know what you're doing. Yeah. So I mean, there's different types of strategies. I mean, because it does happen. Like you get a sample at literally the last second, and you've got to present on it. Like you just make it clear. Just let them know, like, hey, I just got this. I'm still going through it. But what would you be looking for in a fixture like this? And let's see if it has it. There's ways that you can structure the conversation to really bring that customer in and help them to understand it. Yeah. So like, well, what are you looking for in a thing? Look, in sales, if you're talking more than the customer, you're not doing sales right. They should be asking questions. They should be telling you about what they do. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, you say if you're talking,
that means
more
I'm
than
just
the
I'm just talking at the customer.
Yeah. Okay. I thought you said the opposite.
No.
Yeah.
Look, you're never going to believe it. It's got this thing in it. It's got that. And the hoochie flashers on it are unbelievable. But did I tell you about this thing? Like, no, you've got to really engage the customers. Be like, well, when you're looking for a brand new whatever, when you're looking for a new hoochie flanger, what's the most important piece of it for you? Ask those probing questions that aren't like yes or no. Something that's open-ended.
It's funny you call them probing questions, because Robert Joel's, as I mentioned in that customer-centered selling book to read, that's a mandatory book for anyone trying to get very granular about how to be a master salesperson, which is really just code for how to be a master persuader. Yeah. Honestly, it should be mandatory reading for everybody, even if you're just an artist trying to convince someone, hey, my personal brand is important and matters. There's 3 different types of qualifying questions in there, essentially, which is the second step out of 8 in that book, if I remember correctly. There's like a flywheel with like 8 different phases of the sale. And one of the 3 types of question is called a probing question, to probe deeper into what the customer perceives as his or her problems, and what's important to the customer, right? Like what you said. The whole process is basically having control of the conversation and where it's going and what we're thinking about and what we're explaining and talking about and what problems we're trying to elucidate. You have control over where it's going, but you're not necessarily the person saying the stuff that keeps it in control, right? You're the person who is guiding the conversation, and so you're like tending to a campfire is the analogy. Made in the book, right? And the biggest quote in that book is that let me pull up the quote just so I can. Joel's selling is quote. But basically the quote is something to the degree of selling is the act of planting an idea or a seed of an idea in a customer's mind and making them think that they thought of it. And that is what the core of persuasion really is. And that may sound dark and evil, but that all depends on your intentions, right? And that comes back to the character building piece that we said in the beginning, a little earlier, and also how to discipline and steer yourself in a noble and constructive way. And you don't do that just because that's what being a good person is. You do that because that gives you maximal agency over yourself, so you're not a slave to your avarices and your greed and what you want to, take from people in a zero-sum manner. You add value to the world by knowing these deep persuasive principles and using them in a constructive way, which is listed in the book as to solve the customer's problem in a way, in such a way that they get a better solution than they would have found on their own. Right? You're giving them the best solution you can possibly find, and you're honest with yourself.
Look, I'm an educator. I'm a guide when it comes to talking to customers about what they need, what the problem is, and what's that possible solution is. That's the 101 in my mind of sales. It's problem solution. That's what we're engaging in. And so when it comes to any type of diplomacy in that negotiation, my version of diplomacy, it's the art of letting someone else have your way. And that's what I want to do, is I want to plant that seed.
True. That's so true. Yeah.
Let them know, but you've still got to tend to it, and that's a big sales mistake too. Is like, once you build the relationships, not maintaining them. Those are the most important ones, because those are the ones that bear most fruit. But some people, when they get into sales, they get addicted into the acquisition. They're addicted to the acquisition side of it. I like the relationship side, but I still have a lot that I need to get better at. That's one thing that I'm finding, is I'm saying, okay, let's be honest with me. What am I sucking at? What am I doing really good at? And celebrating those. But if I find something that's not working, let's go fix it 100%. Don't delay. Be that proactive, thinking about it, have that volition, jump up and get it done right now. And that's the same stuff that I'm teaching my kids as they're, entering high school and they're starting to learn the ropes. It's like, dude, look, if you don't have all the information, you need to get all the information. How do you do that? It's how do you have that conversation with yourself that you're not getting your work done because you have something else you'd rather do, or you just don't like it and you won't say anything, or you need help, even worse, and you won't say anything. So it's being that honest with yourself as you're building your brand. So you've got to do that.
There's nothing wrong with needing help. That's actually, the smartest the people who get the most done know that they don't have to be the smartest people in the room, that they just need to be the people who know how to most efficiently get the information and the help that they need when they need it to solve the problem the quickest, right? That's another one of those Kiyosaki-isms, is if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And if you're the dumbest person in the room, you're in the right room.
You play with them.
Because you want to grow as fast as possible.
You've got to swim with the school of fish that you want to be the most like, because you grow to your surroundings. And look, it is some of the so lucrative to be the big fish in the little pond. I've seen that in action and what somebody can do, and the amount of damage that one person can do being just a big fish in a little pond. That's crazy. What they can do to the community, to destroy a community.
There's a time and a place.
Being a big fish in a little pond. I've seen that happen as well. But, I'm always seeking out those opportunities so I can find out what's bigger than me out there, and I can join up with that. And get that abundance mindset. And it's an evolutionary process, and it requires delayed gratification. These are all things that our society does not value anymore. They all want quick wins.
Yeah. I don't think it's necessarily that people, just by default, like, consciously decide not to value these things. I think this just decoupling from proper mentorship at the most basic level, which is just
parenting,
stable families in general. I think that parenting, most people, I think the average house doesn't have two parents in it these days. So that's a huge problem. So people just aren't being mentored at the most basic level. The education system sucks ass, and has been deteriorating, is wildly deteriorating these days. Then it's also that, all the marketing and sales forces are, this is why people hate, sales in marketing, is they're contributing to this impulsivity, and that's now buried into big tech and the way phones are structured, and how I can be entertained on I I can literally swipe multiple different reels a second until I find one that's going to entertain me for the next 8 seconds, and then keep going and do that. Some people do that, for 3 or 4 hours at a time, sometimes more than once a day, daily, right? And so people are just being given all the resources to systematically destroy those values. And I think that when people are confronted with these values and why they are specifically helpful in a selfish way to them, I think that there's something that just naturally resonates inside of people that says, oh, that does matter, right? And there are some people for whom that doesn't resonate, and I think that, they're just not hearing the message at the right time. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? But I don't think it's necessarily that some people think, oh, it's because people suck and, we're all just fucked and it's just the way it is. I think it can't be further from the truth. I think that people are just purposely being steered, and that's a conversation I had with Elliot a number of weeks back that I want to dig in with him a little deeper on the podcast with, is this concept of societal steering, that people are systematically being steered to the wrong values that will destroy themselves, right? And so it's good that you prioritize these things. I think that it would behoove everybody to prioritize these things, but I don't know if you had any other kind of commentary on that.
Yeah,
I know we're kind of getting close to time.
This is up to you what you do with this journey. We're all on it, whether consciously or subconsciously or unconsciously. We're all going about it, trying to figure it out the best way that we can do it. And I think that there are tried and true principles that are out there, and it's be enthusiastic about what you're wanting to do and be kind to others as you're doing it. And figure out what your niche is in that, and be curious, and because it's so easy for others to take advantage of you if you don't have your guard up, if you don't have your own agenda. Because look, if you're not living your dream, you're going to be living somebody else's.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. And I think I finally got to a point, and I said now or never, because I'm not getting any younger. Do I want my kids to respect me more for trying, or from taking the safe route and still getting screwed? I don't know. I think I know which one I want. I want my kids to see me know that Dad gave his best effort, and who knows, I might just win.
It's a it's a balance of risks, right? It's not a riskless path and a risky path. It's a balance of different.
And that's what I'm doing, and that's what I would tell anybody else in this. If you want to do it, do it so bad that you would sacrifice anything else for it, because that's what I had to do.
Then there's nothing left on the table.
I just got lucky. I've got a wife who believes in me, and I've got 4 kids who love me, and they want to be a part of it, and that gives me extra motivation. That synergy.
That's critical, and safety, and comfort, right? Knowing that no matter how far you reach, you got people back in your corner who who really want you to succeed, and aren't going to who you can depend on to be there.
The family. And I hear this from a lot of musicians that don't want to have kids. They don't want to bring that responsibility in, or I'm just having too much damn fun right now. Whatever the case is, whatever they say, I look at it this way. What happens if you couldn't play music anymore? What if you're out there playing slow pitch softball with a bunch of friends, drinking a few beers, and you hear the clink of the bat, and you turn to look right in time when it hits you right in the temple? Boom, lights out. It could be that fast. There's been stories of so many musician friends that I have of just like it being over. I had a really, really good friend, got killed on tour, Nashville, right in between 2 semis. Just he was done. That was it. One of the most talented musicians I've ever known. Wow. Unbelievable loss. I mean, look, it could all be over, and I am awesomely pumped that I have a family legacy that I get to leave behind with all of this. So, for me, that's my catalyst. That's what helps really keep me going. And if they weren't around, obviously I'd still be going after it. But if I couldn't do the music thing anymore, I got a pretty awesome alternative. So I'll have grandkids at some point. I'll have, the next generation to teach, and I'm enjoying being in the process of teaching this generation as they're picking up music, and they are benefiting from all of that knowledge, and we're creating another generation of musicians within our family, and it's pretty awesome. I'm enjoying it. So, So
it's pretty rewarding in and of itself, in a way that you can't
right.
really
You just
put
gotta
any,
experience it. I'm
can't put
telling
a
you,
price
it's worth
on
it.
that.
So.
I think that's a pretty good place to stop. Again, thanks so much for coming on, and we always have really great conversations, and I know there will be more to come. Anything kind of closing remarks, or just where you think you'd like people to find you personally, if at
Nate
all?
at promediarep.com.
You're a pretty private guy,
That's my main email. So feel free to send it if you have questions. I mean, if they're gear related stuff too, and you want to make purchases, I know all the dealer networks too out there. Schedule a Digico console demo. Awesome. So totally worth it. So.
Yeah. Cool. Well, again,
Thanks.
good to have you
as
on,
well.
man.
Thanks,
Always
John.
a pleasure talking.